Most people spend their whole lives chasing a word they never truly define. They chase it the way a child chases a balloon, running faster, reaching higher, always just a little behind it, until one day they stop, out of breath, and wonder why it never felt like they thought it would. And the strange thing is this: the world applauds the chase. The world calls you successful when you look successful, when you appear to have arrived. When you can show a receipt, a title, a number, a headline, a picture of the moment, you made it. But let's be honest for a moment, you made it. But let's be honest for a moment, quietly honest, the kind of honest you rarely hear in a noisy world. If success is something you only feel after you reach a certain place, then most of your life will be spent in failure, because most of your life is spent traveling. And that would be a terrible design for a human being. It would mean we were built to feel miserable during the journey and only feel fulfilled at the finish line. Yet life doesn't work that way. The finish line keeps moving. The finish line changes its name. The finish line becomes another finish line. So we need a better definition. A definition you can live with. A definition that doesn't depend on luck, on opinion, on the mood of the economy, or the approval of strangers. Here it is, simple enough to remember, strong enough to build a life upon. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Not the sudden realization, not the lucky break, not the one dramatic moment when the curtain rises and the crowd stands. Progressive realization, step by step, quietly, steadily, intelligently, and notice the second part, worthy ideal. Not just any desire, not just any ambition, not the shallow hunger to impress. A worthy ideal is something that deserves your life's energy, something that improves you as you pursue it, something that makes the world a little better because you were here. Because by this definition, the person who has found what they want to do, who has chosen a direction that is meaningful, and who is moving toward it is successful the moment they begin. Today, not someday. Not after they arrive. Today, if they're headed toward a worthy ideal with their mind, their time, and their effort. They may not have the money yet. They may not have the recognition yet. They may not even have the recognition yet. They may not even have the proof yet. But they have something far rarer. They have a clear destination, and they are in motion. Do you see what that means? It means the world can't take success away from you. It means success is not a gift handed down by circumstances. It's not something that belongs only to the young, or only to the lucky, or only to the lucky, or only to those who were born in the right place. Success becomes a way of living, a daily standard, a personal agreement with yourself. This is my ideal. This is worthy of my time, and I will move toward it. And if you can do that, if you can decide, clearly and calmly, what your worthy ideal is, then time stops being an enemy. Age stops being a threat. Even failure changes its meaning, because failure changes its meaning, because failure becomes feedback, not a verdict. The detours become training. The delays become refinement. The setbacks become part of the progress. So the question is not, are you successful? The real question, the only one that matters, is this: what is your worthy ideal, and are you progressively realizing it? Because the moment you can answer that, you won't need permission. You won't need applause. You won't need to compare your life. You won't need to compare your life to anyone else's highlight reel. You'll have something most people never find: the quiet confidence of a person who knows where they are going and why. Most people have been taught a definition of success that's so fragile it can shatter in a single season. A market turns. A company reorganizes. A title changes. A headline fades. A body ages. A trend moves on. And suddenly a person who felt successful yesterday feels invisible today. That kind of success is built on the opinions of others and the temporary arrangements of life. It's a performance, not a principle. It's something you have to keep proving, and proving, and proving, like carrying water in a bucket with a crack in it, always refilling, always afraid it might run dry at the worst moment. Now think about how many people live under that pressure without realizing it. They wake up with a nervous question, hiding under their routine. Am I still winning? They scan their world for evidence. They look for approval, for numbers, for symbols. They listen for compliments. They fear criticism. And even when they achieve what they once wanted, they discover an uncomfortable truth. Applause does not equal peace. Recognition does not equal peace. Recognition does not equal fulfillment. A person can be admired and still be empty. A person can be wealthy and still feel poor inside. A person can be surrounded by praise and still feel alone. That's because the world's definition of success is usually external, while the hunger that keeps a human being awake at night is internal. So keynote number 1 matters because it asks us to redefine success at the root, not as a trophy at the end of the road, but as the direction we choose and the progress we make while we're traveling. You see, a trophy is something you hold. A direction is something you live. A trophy can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. A direction becomes part of your identity. When you define success as something you get, you become dependent on outcomes. But when you define success as a process you do, you become responsible for your own life in the best possible way. Here's the key distinction. The world tends to measure success by results, while a wiser standard measures it by alignment. Are your days aligned with what you believe is worth doing? Are your habits aligned with what you say matters? Are your decisions aligned with your values? Because if they are, you are successful in the truest sense right now, whether the outer world sees it or not. And if they are not, then no amount of outer achievement can fix the quiet discomfort of an inner contradiction. That is why direction is more reliable than applause. Applause is noise. Direction is a compass. Applause comes from people who may not know your struggles, your intentions, your character, or your calling. Direction comes from the deepest part of you that recognizes what is worthy and says, "This is the path." And when you have that, you no longer need to borrow your self-worth from circumstances. You stop living like a thermometer that merely reflects the temperature of the room, and you become a thermostat that sets it. Now let's talk about what happens when a person adopts this definition. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Immediately their life changes from waiting to living. They stop postponing their satisfaction until a future moment. They stop saying, "I'll be happy," because they understand that the when is a moving target. The promotion becomes another promotion. The goal becomes another goal. The finish line becomes another goal. The finish line becomes another finish line. Instead, they bring meaning into the present by choosing a worthy ideal and moving toward it today. This is not an excuse to be lazy about results. It's not a romantic speech about ignoring achievement. Results matter. They are evidence. They are feedback. They are often necessary for practical life. But results are not the foundation. They're the fruit, not the root. If you stare at fruit all day, it won't grow. Fruit grows when the root is healthy, and your root is your direction. Your ideals, your purpose, your daily discipline. When your direction is right, results become more likely. When your direction is wrong, results, if they come, often come at a price you didn't intend to pay. Think of two people. One is chasing symbols, money, image, status, the appearance of success. The other is building something worthy, a skill, a craft, a business that serves, a family culture, a life of character, a mission that improves others. Now, the first person may look impressive for a while. They may even be celebrated. But they are always at risk because their success is leased from the outside world. The second person may not look spectacular early on. Their path may be quiet. Their progress may be slow. But they are secure because their success is owned from within. It is the act of becoming, not the act of showing off. This changes how you handle setbacks. If success is applause, then criticism feels like failure. If success is a title, then losing the job feels like losing your identity. If success is money, then a downturn feels like the end. But if success is direction, then setbacks become part of the route. They may slow you down, but they don't define you. You can say, "I am still headed toward my worthy ideal. I am still progressing. I am still learning. I am still building." And that statement is not wishful thinking. It is a description of reality. Because progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes progress is simply refusing to quit. Sometimes it is adjusting your plan. Sometimes it is adjusting your plan. Sometimes it is starting again with more wisdom than you had before. And this is where the greatest freedom enters. You become successful at the moment you commit to a worthy ideal and begin moving toward it. Not when you finish. Not when you get permission. Not when others finally understand. The beginning becomes success, because the beginning is the turning point. Most people never begin. They dream, they talk, they intend, they postpone. But the moment you begin, when you set your mind, choose your direction, and take action, you have crossed a line that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary sick. This also makes success available at any age. If success is youth, then aging is tragic. If success is being at the top, then most of life is spent not at the top. But if success is progressive realization, then your later years can be your finest years. Because the question becomes, what worthy ideal am I moving toward now? It could be health, it could be wisdom, it could be mentoring, it could be rebuilding, it could be service, it could be learning, it could be spiritual depth, it could be writing the book you always carried inside you, it could be repairing relationships, it could be building a legacy. As long as it is worthy and as long as you are progressing, you are successful. So keynote number 1 is not a clever phrase, it is a rescue rope. It pulls people out of the shallow trap of comparison and into the deep, steady water of purpose. It says, stop measuring your life by someone else's scoreboard. It says, stop waiting for the world to certify your value. It says, choose a worthy ideal and let your daily progress become your success. And when you live by that, you stop being a prisoner of appearances, and you become the architect of a life that can stand up in any season, under any sky, in any shack, in any chapter. A great many people confuse a wish with an ideal. They confuse an impulse with a purpose. They confuse a craving with a calling. And then, years later, they look back and wonder why the road felt empty even when they were moving fast. That is why the phrase, a worthy ideal, is the hinge on which the whole idea of success swings. Because success is not merely progress. Even a ship that is sailing steadily can be headed toward the wrong shore. Progressive realization, by itself, simply means you are moving. But whether that movement becomes a life of fulfillment or a life of regret depends entirely on what you are moving toward. So what is an ideal? An ideal is a mental picture of a life you consider worth living, a direction that gives meaning to your days, a standard that organizes your choices. It is more than a goal. A goal can be a single achievement. An ideal is a way of being. A goal might be to earn a certain amount, lose a certain amount, reach a certain amount, reach a certain position, buy a certain thing. An ideal is the person you become as you pursue what matters. It is a visi. On that calls your better self forward. Now, the most important word in that phrase is worthy. Worthy of what? Worthy of your time, your attention, your energy, your character, your one and only life. Worthy ideals don't merely take from you, they build you. Worthy ideals don't shrink you into anxiety and selfishness. They expand you into strength and contribution. Worthy ideals stand up under examination. Worthy ideals stand up under examination. They do not depend on deception, exploitation, or the suffering of others. They don't require you to become someone you wouldn't respect in order to succeed. This is where many people get trapped, often without realizing it. They adopt ideals handed to them by their environment. The crowd says, this is success. The culture says, if you don't have this, you're behind. Social proof says, if it's popular, it must be right. And little by little, a person begins chasing an ideal that isn't truly theirs. They pursue something because it looks impressive, not because it is meaningful. They want it because others want it. They value it because others applaud it. And then the strangest thing happens. They may achieve it and still feel dissatisfied. Not because achievement is bad, but because their soul cannot be satisfied by a target that doesn't match their values. A worthy ideal has 3 qualities that make it different from a mere desire. First, it is deeply meaningful to you, not in a shallow way, but in a lasting way. It connects to your values, your convictions, your sense of purpose. Second, it is beneficial beyond you. That does not mean you must become a saint or give up comfort. It means your success does not require others to lose, so you can win. It means the path adds value, solves a problem, heals, teaches, builds, or inspires. Third, it is aligned with your integrity. You can pursue it without hiding, without pretending, without sacrificing your self-respect. This alignment with integrity is not a moral lecture, it is practical. Because the moment you choose an unworthy ideal, you create inner conflict. You begin to live two lives, the life you show and the life you feel. You may look successful to others, but inside, you will be negotiating with your conscience. That negotiation drains energy. It steals joy. It turns achievements into burdens. It makes you anxious because you know somewhere deep down that you are building a life that cannot fully satisfy you. And the most expensive thing you can purchase in this world is a life you don't want to live. A worthy ideal, on the other hand, gives you an internal yes. It produces a steadiness that no applause can replicate. You can work hard without bitterness because you believe in what you're building. You can endure delay without despair because the direction itself is meaningful. You can handle criticism without collapsing because your identity isn't tied to approval. This is why people who are truly fulfilled often seem calmer than those who are merely celebrated. They are not trying to prove themselves every minute. They are expressing themselves through a worthy pursuit. Now, how do you know whether your ideal is worthy? Ask yourself a few simple, honest questions. If I achieved this fully, would it make me more of the person I respect, or less? Would it improve my life in a way that lasts, or would it only give me a temporary thrill? Would I be proud to teach this ideal to my children, or to someone I love? Does this ideal require me to harm my health, my relationships, my integrity, or my peace of mind? If the ideal costs you your character, it is too expensive. If it costs you your family, your health, or your inner stability, you are not paying a price. You are paying a penalty. Another test is this: does your ideal give meaning to the ordinary day? Because life, is mostly ordinary days. It's not mostly ceremonies and celebrations. It's mornings, afternoons, evenings. It's routine. If your ideal only excites you when you imagine the finish line but gives you no purpose in the daily work, it may not be an ideal at all. Worthy ideals make the journey worthwhile. They make the Tuesday meaningful. They make the effort itself honorable, and a worthy ideal is not always glamorous. Sometimes it is quiet and deeply human. It may be the ideal of being a present parent, the ideal of mastering a craft, the ideal of serving your community, the ideal of becoming financially responsible after years of stress, the ideal of becoming a person of patience, wisdom, and generosity. But your life will reward you with something better. Stability, self-respect, peace, and the kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. When you choose a worthy ideal, you also protect yourself from comparison, because you are no longer racing other people. You are walking your path. You are no longer living by borrowed desires. You are living by chosen values. And that makes success personal, not competitive. It becomes a measure of alignment, not of superiority. This is why the definition says, a worthy ideal and not merely an ideal. Because an unworthy ideal can be progressively realized too. A person can steadily become more selfish, more bitter, more addicted, more arrogant. That is also progress, but it is progress in the wrong direction. So, the worthiness of the ideal is the safeguard. It keeps your success from becoming a tragedy disguised as achievement. It keeps your ambition from becoming a prison. So if you want a life that feels truly successful, don't start by asking how fast you can move. Start by asking where you are headed and whether that destination deserves you. Decide what is worthy, decide what is worthy, decide what is true, decide what kind of person you want to become, and then let every day be a small vote in favor of that ideal, because the ideal you choose today will quietly shape the person you are tomorrow. And eventually it will shape the life you call your own. There is a quiet misunderstanding that has stolen more peace of mind from human beings than almost any other. The belief that success is a place you arrive. People talk about it as though it were a city on a map. When I get there, I'll be successful. And because there is always somewhere in the future. Success becomes a stranger you keep planning to meet but never quite do. The years move on, the calendar pages turn, and a person can spend decades living in a constant state of not yet, always reaching, always postponing their sense of arrival. That is why the phrase progressive realization is so important. It removes success from the far horizon and places it into the daily life. Progressive realization means that success is not a single moment. It is not a sudden miracle. It is not a dramatic scene where the lights come on and the crowd stands. Success is the ongoing, steady movement toward a worthy ideal. It is the lived process of becoming, and that single shift in thinking can change the entire emotional climate of a person's life. Progressive means gradual, continuing, forward-moving. It suggests growth. It suggests development. It suggests that something is unfolding over time. Realization means making something real, bringing it from the world of intention into the world of action and results. Put the two together and you see the brilliance of the definition. Success is the ongoing process of making your worthy ideal real, one step at a time. Not merely thinking about it. Not merely admiring it. Not merely admiring it. Not merely talking about it. Realizing it. Bringing it into existence through deliberate action. Now, notice what this does to the way you measure your life. If you measure success as a final outcome, then the only day that matters is the day you arrive. And that makes every other day feel like a waiting room. It makes the journey feel like a waiting room. It makes the journey feel like a penalty you must endure to earn the reward. That is a recipe for frustration. But if you measure success as progressive realization, then the day you begin matters. The day you practice matters. The day you learn matters. The day you correct your course matters. The day you correct your course matters. The day you show up when you don't feel like it matters. Suddenly life is no longer on hold. Life is the process. This is not semantics. This is emotional reality. Human beings don't live in grand finales. They live in ordinary sequences. Your life is made of mornings and evenings, of habits and decisions, of the way you speak, the way you treat people, the way you treat people, the way you treat people, the way you respond to setbacks. A person who is always waiting to arrive is living at war with their own present moment. But a person who understands progressive realization can live with a calm dignity because they know that today's step is part of success. Consider how nature works. Nothing worthwhile grows overnight. A seed does not apologize for being a seed. It does not feel inferior because it isn't a tree yet. It is simply in its stage, doing its work, moving toward what it is meant to become. And that is exactly how human achievement works when it is healthy. The beginner is not a failure. The beginner is not a failure. The beginner is a beginner. The learner is not behind. The learner is learning. The person who is rebuilding is not broken. The person who is rebuilding is not broken. The person who is rebuilding is in progress. Progressive realization gives you permission to be in process without condemning yourself for not being finished. This changes the way you handle time. Instead of being haunted by how long something might take, you become committed to the daily practice. You stop asking, "When will I get there?" and start asking, "What is my next step?" And the moment you focus on the next step, you regain power. Because you can take a next step today. You can take 10 years today. You can't take 10 years today. You can't leap across the whole distance in one bound. But you can take a step, and repeated steps become a mile. Repeated miles become a journey. Repeated journeys become a life. Progressive realization also destroys the myth of the overnight successes. Most overnight successes are simply the public noticing what has been quietly built for years. Behind every masterpiece is practice. Behind every stable business is discipline. Behind every strong marriage is daily choice. Behind every strong marriage is daily choice. Behind every healthy body is consistent habit. Progressive realization honors reality. It says, "I will build," not "I will wish," not "I will wait." I will build progressively, steadily, intelligently. Now this idea is deeply practical because it shifts your focus from frantic motivation to quiet systems. If success is a moment, then you depend on emotional peaks. You need excitement. You need inspiration. You need the perfect mood. But moods are unreliable. Emotions rise and fall like weather. Systems, on the other hand, are dependable. Progressive realization is built on systems. You decide what matters, then you create a pattern of action that makes it inevitable. You write a page a day, you walk 30 minutes a day. You make one sales call a day. You study a skill every evening. You save a small amount consistently. You speak kindly even when you're tired. These are not heroic acts, but they are how a worthy ideal becomes real. And the greatest advantage of this approach is that it protects you from discouragement. Discouragement often comes from the distance between where you are and where you want to be. When people stare at that distance, they feel small. They feel late. They feel behind. They feel overwhelmed. Progressive realization teaches you to look at the direction instead. Are you headed toward the right ideal? Are you moving? Are you learning? Are you improving? Because if you are, then you are successful by definition, even if the distance is still large. And that gives you the fuel to continue. It also changes the meaning of failure. If success is a perfect straight line, then any stumble feels like the end. But progressive realization assumes adjustment. It assumes learning. It assumes that you will sometimes miscalculate, sometimes fall short, sometimes discover a better method. Failure becomes feedback. It becomes part of the realization process. A person who is progressively realizing an ideal is not someone who never fails. It is someone who continues in the right direction and uses everything, success and setback alike, as material for growth. There is another powerful aspect to progressive realization. It makes success available to everyone, not just a few. If success is only the final outcome, then only a small number of people can claim it at any given time. But if success is progressive realization, then anyone who chooses a worthy ideal and begins moving toward it can be successful immediately. The student who studies with purpose is successful. The young parent who builds a stable home is successful. The worker who learns a craft with excellence is successful. The person who turns their life around is successful. This definition democratizes success. It restores it to the realm of personal responsibility rather than external permission, and that is the calm power of Keynote number 3. It tells you that your life is not a spectator sport. You are not here to watch others win while you wait for your turn. You are here to choose a worthy ideal and progressively realize it, one day at a time. And when you live that way, your days stop feeling like random events and start feeling like a purposeful journey, because every deliberate step is a declaration that you are becoming the person you decided to be, and that is success in its most real and lasting form. A person's life will always move in the direction of their clearest thought, not their strongest wish, not their loudest complaint, not their occasional burst of motivation, their clearest thought, because clarity does something that nothing else can do. It organizes. It brings order to the scattered energy of a human being. It turns noise into focus. It turns drifting into direction. And that is why Keynote number 4 is so vital. Clarity creates power. Most people do not lack ability. They lack definition. They do not lack time. They lack priority. They do not lack potential. They lack a clear target. So they spend their days reacting to messages, reacting to moods, reacting to what is urgent, reacting to what other people expect, until their life becomes a long series of responses instead of a deliberate creation. And then they wonder why they feel tired. They wonder why they feel behind. They wonder why their goals stay stubbornly out of reach. The answer is almost always the same. Too many aims, too little clarity. You see, the mind is a marvelous instrument, but it was never designed to work well under confusion. Confusion produces hesitation, and hesitation produces delay, and delay produces regret. When a person is unclear, they start many things and finish few. They make promises to themselves and break them not because they are weak, but because they were never truly committed to one defined direction. They were trying to move in several directions at once, and that always results in motion without progress. Clarity is the act of deciding. T is the moment you say, this is it. This is what I want. This is what I value. This is what I'm building. This is the worthy ideal I will progressively realize. And the moment you decide, an invisible change occurs. Your brain begins to filter the world differently. You begin to notice opportunities that were always present but previously invisible to you. You begin to see distractions for what they are. You begin to feel a stronger no toward things that don't fit, and a stronger yes toward what does. Your time starts to align. Your choices start to align. Your energy stops leaking in 100 directions and begins to concentrate like sunlight to a magnifying glass. That is why clarity creates power. Power is concentrated energy. A river that spreads into a swamp loses its force. A river that stays within its banks can move mountains over time. Your life is the same way. If your attention is scattered across many half-hearted pursuits, you will feel busy but unproductive. But if your attention is focused on a clearly defined ideal, you will feel a quiet strength growing inside you because you are no longer spending your life. You are investing it now. Let's be practical about what clarity actually looks like. Clarity is not vague. It is not, I want to be successful. It is, I want to become excellent at this skill. It is, I want to become excellent at this skill. It is, I want to restore my health to this level. It is, I want to write this book. It is, I want to create this body of work. It is, I want to be this kind of spouse, parent, leader, or human being. Clarity is specific enough that you can act on it today. It is defined enough that you can measure your progress. It is meaningful enough that you can endure discomfort for it. Without clarity, discipline feels like punishment. With clarity, discipline feels like strategy. The same action waking, up early, practicing, saving money, studying, exercising, can feel either miserable or purposeful depending on clarity. When you don't know why you're doing something, even small effort feels heavy. But when you know why, effort gains dignity. Clarity turns effort into a chosen act rather than a forced act. Clarity also protects you from being hypnotized by other people's lives. One of the greatest thieves of clarity is comparison. When you constantly measure yourself against others, you start borrowing their ideals. You start wanting what they want, not because it's worthy for you, but because it looks attractive from the outside. And then your life becomes confusing because you're trying to live someone else's blueprint with your own materials. The result is frustration. Clarity brings you back to your own lane. It asks, what is worthy for you? And once you answer that honestly, comparison loses its grip because you are no longer trying to win someone else's race. Another benefit of clarity is that it reduces anxiety. Anxiety is often the emotional result of uncertainty and overload. When you don't know what matters most, everything feels like it matters, and that creates pressure. But when you are clear, you can simplify. You can say, this is important, this is not. You can organize your day around your ideal. You can make decisions faster because you have a standard. You can let go of guilt about things that aren't truly yours to carry. Clarity doesn't remove all challenges, but it makes challenges cleaner. It turns chaos into a manageable sequence of steps. Clarity also strengthens confidence. Not the loud kind of confidence that needs to boast, but the quiet kind that comes from self-trust. Self-trust is built when your actions match your decisions. When you are unclear, you can't consistently keep promises to yourself because you don't know what you are promising. But when you are clear, you can make small commitments and keep them. You can say, today I will do this one thing that serves my ideal. And when you do it, you reinforce your identity as a person who follows through. That is real confidence. It is earned, not imagined. Now you may ask, how do I get clarity? You get it the same way you get anything valuable. You pay attention and you decide. You ask yourself what you truly want to build, and you test it against worthiness. You write it down in plain language. You remove the fluff. You reduce it to a sentence you can live by, and then most importantly, you return to it often. Clarity is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. Because the world will try to pull you back into distraction. The world will offer you shiny things. The world will tempt you with urgent nonsense. So you must renew your clarity like you would sharpen a tool. When your purpose is clear, the next step becomes obvious. More often than not, it may not be easy, but it becomes clear. And that is the power. Clarity does not guarantee comfort. It guarantees direction. It gives you a standard by which to say yes and no. It gives you a lens through which to interpret opportunity and temptation. It gives you a way to turn your time into progress, your days into momentum, your habits into results. This is why the person who knows exactly what they are after can seem almost unstoppable. Not because they are lucky, but because they are focused. They are no longer living in fragments. They are living in alignment. They are living in alignment. They are no longer hoping their life will work out. They are working their life out with intention. And when a human being gains that kind of clarity, when they define a worthy ideal and commit to progressively realizing it, they stop being pushed around by circumstances and begin moving steadily toward the life they have chosen. 1D, decisive day at a time. There is a principle operating in every life. Whether a person understands it or not, it is not complicated, but it is exact. It is not mystical, but it is powerful. It does not play favorites, and it does not negotiate. It simply works. And Keynote number 5 is built on that principle. The law of direction, whatever you consistently think about and act upon, you move toward. Most people believe their life is shaped primarily by big events: the promotion, the loss, the marriage, the move, the crisis, the lucky break. But big events are usually the result of smaller forces that were working quietly for a long time. A tree doesn't fall because of a single gust of wind. It falls because of the direction it leaned for years, because of the unseen rot, because of the tiny compromises in structure. In the same way, a life does not suddenly become fulfilling or suddenly become broken. A life becomes what it becomes by direction, by the repeated thoughts, repeated choices, repeated habits that are so ordinary you hardly notice them. Direction begins in the mind, not because the mind is magic, but because the mind is the command center. The mind selects what you notice, what you interpret, what you value, and what you do next. The mind is constantly answering the question, what matters right now? And whatever you train your mind to treat as important becomes the thing you feed with time and energy. Over days, that becomes habit. Over years, that becomes character. Over decades, that becomes destiny. Now, here is the mistake many people make. They think occasional good thoughts will cancel out consistent negative patterns. They read something inspiring for 10 minutes, feel a lift, and then spend the next 10 hours feeding worry, resentment, distraction, or aimlessness. They wonder why nothing changes. But direction is not set by what you do once in a while. Direction is set by what you do consistently. A ship's course is not determined by one quick turn of the wheel. It is determined by the steady heading. A degree off over a long distance will take you to a different continent. That's why small, daily thinking patterns matter so much. Consider what happens when a person repeatedly thinks in the direction of fear, not just once, but as a habit. Fear becomes their default lens. They see threat everywhere. They anticipate loss. They interpret uncertainty as danger, and then their actions match that thinking. They hesitate. They avoid. They procrastinate. They settle for less than they could build. Their world shrinks, not because the world forced them, but because their direction led them there. The mind set the heading, and the life followed it. Now consider the person who repeatedly thinks in the direction of growth. They ask better questions. They focus on solutions. They expect obstacles, but do not worship them. They accept discomfort as the price of development. Their actions match that thinking. They practice. They learn. They try again. They build skill. And gradually the world opens to them, not because they had no problems, but because they had no problems, but because their direction made them stronger than their problems. Same world, different heading. This is why consistent thinking and action must work together. Thinking without action is fantasy. Action without thinking without action is fantasy. Action without thinking and action align toward a worthy ideal. You create momentum. You stop being the victim of random moods. You stop living on emotional accidents. You become deliberate, and the life you experience becomes less of a surprise, because you are choosing the direction that produces it. Now, think about does not mean simply wishing. It means holding an idea in your mind with attention, returning to it, planning around it, feeding it with study, conversation, and imagination. And act upon means the practical steps, habits, routines, decisions, that move you in that direction. The law of direction doesn't reward daydreams. It responds to focus and follow through. Look at your own life, and you will see the evidence. Whatever you have become skilled at, you have consistently thought about and acted on. Whatever relationships you have built, you have consistently invested attention and behavior into. Whatever health you have, to a large extent, is shaped by consistent choices. Whatever finances you have, to a large extent, are shaped by consistent habits. The law is everywhere. And once you see it, you can use it. Because the moment you control the direction of your mind and your actions, you begin to control the direction of your life. This is where many people feel stuck. They say, I don't know why I keep ending up in the same place. But the place you keep ending up is usually the result of the direction you keep traveling. If your thoughts are dominated by complaint, you will act in ways that reinforce powerlessness. If your thoughts are dominated by distraction, you will act in ways that produce scattered results. If your thoughts are dominated by anger, you will act in ways that poison relationships. If your thoughts are dominated by indulgence, you will act in ways that weaken discipline. The results may look different on the surface, but the direction is the same, so the destination repeats. The good news is that direction can be changed, not overnight in the sense of instant results, but immediately in the sense of a new heading. A pilot can correct course in seconds, and the destination changes even though the plane doesn't arrive instantly. Your life is like that. You can decide today what you will consistently think about and act upon. The external world may take time to catch up, but the inner shift is immediate. You are no longer drifting. You are steering. And here's another crucial point. What you consistently think about doesn't only shape what you do. It shapes what you believe is possible. Repeated thoughts form beliefs. Beliefs form expectations. Expectations influence behavior. Behavior produces outcomes. Outcomes reinforce beliefs. This is how a person becomes trapped in a limiting cycle, or liberated into an expanding one. If you repeatedly tell yourself, I'm too old, too late, too behind, you will act like it's true, and you will gather evidence that it's true, and you will gather evidence that it's true. If you repeatedly tell yourself, I can learn, I can improve, I can take the next step, you will act like it's true, and you will gather evidence that it's true, and you will gather evidence that it's true. Not because the words are magic, but because they change your direction. This law also explains why environment matters. The people you listen to, the information you consume, the conversations you have. These are inputs that information you have. These are inputs that informations you have. If you constantly feed your mind with cynicism, panic, gossip, and negativity, you will start heading in that direction. If you feed your mind with ideas, discipline, truth, encouragement, and purposeful learning, your direction changes. Your mind becomes a garden, and what you plant will grow. So keynote number 5. E is both a warning and an invitation. It warns you that you cannot live a life of greatness while constantly thinking in the direction of smallness. You cannot build peace while constantly feeding conflict. You cannot build prosperity while constantly practicing waste. You cannot build health while constantly indulging habits that destroy it. You move where you point yourself, and it invites you to take a simple, powerful step. Choose your worthy ideal, then choose what you will consistently think about and act upon each day that supports it. Because the moment you do that, you stop arguing with reality and start using it. You begin to harness the law of direction instead of being dragged by it, and little by little the path becomes clearer, the habits becomes clearer, the results become visible, and the life you are living begins to match the life you intended to build. Most people are looking for a dramatic secret to success, something that will change their life in one bold stroke, a single breakthrough, a sudden flood of motivation, a perfect opportunity. But life is rarely transformed by a single explosion. Life is transformed by a system, and that system is built out of habits. That is why keynote number 6 matters so much. Habits are the machinery of success, and small disciplines, practiced daily, become unstoppable momentum. A worthy ideal is a beautiful thing to hold in your mind, but it does not become real because it is beautiful. It becomes real because you turn it into behavior. And behavior, repeated, becomes habit. Habits are simply actions that have been practiced so often that they begin to run automatically. In other words, habits are your default settings. They are what you do when you are not thinking about what you are doing. That is why they are so powerful. A person does not rise to the level of their dreams. They fall to the level of their systems. If you think about it, your days are mostly habits. You wake up the same way. You speak in familiar patterns. You eat in familiar ways. You handle stress in familiar ways. You spend time in familiar ways. You make the same kinds of excuses, the same kinds of decisions, the same kinds of decisions, the same kinds of trade-offs. And those daily habits, like small gears in a clock, keep turning whether you notice them or not. Over time, they create a life. That life may be by design or by default, but it will be the result of habits. Now, here is the most liberating thing about habits. They remove the need for constant motivation. Motivation is wonderful, but it is unreliable. It rises when you feel inspired and disappears when you feel inspired and disappears when you feel tired, stressed, or discouraged. If your progress depends on motivation, your progress will be inconsistent. But if your progress depends on habit, your progress will be steady. Habit does not ask you how you feel. Habit simply runs. That is why a person with the right habits can outperform a person with greater talent but weaker routines. Talent is potential. Habits are production. Small disciplines are the building blocks of those habits. The word discipline scares people because they imagine punishment, but discipline is not punishment. Discipline is training. It is the act of choosing what you want most over what you want now. It is not a harsh lifestyle. It is a purposeful one. And the disciplines that matter most are usually small. They don't look heroic. They look ordinary. They look like reading 10 pages a day, practicing a skill for 20 minutes, walking daily, saving a little consistently, writing 1 page, making 1 call, preparing tomorrow's plan tonight, drinking water, going to bed on time. These aren't glamorous, but they are powerful because they compound. Compounding is one of the great laws of life. And habits are how you harness it. Well, and you do something small every day. You are not merely repeating an action. You are building momentum. Each repetition makes the next one easier. Each day of practice makes you slightly better. Each day of consistency strengthens identity. You begin to see yourself as the kind of person who does that thing. And identity is a powerful driver. When you believe this is who I am, your behavior becomes more consistent because you are no longer negotiating with yourself every day. You are simply living out your identity. This is why the phrase machinery of success is accurate. Success is not usually created by a single decision. It is created by a set of daily operations. If a factory has the right machines running reliably, it produces output. If a life has the right habits running reliably, it produces results. And the beauty of machinery is that it works even when you're not excited. It works when you're busy. It works when life is imperfect. The right habits keep you moving toward your worthy ideal, even on days when your emotions are uncooperative. Now, people often fail at habits because they try to make them too big. They try to overhaul their entire life in 1 week. They decide they will change everything, and when they cannot maintain the intensity, they conclude they are weak. That is not weakness. That is misunderstanding. The goal of a habit is not to impress yourself. The goal is to become consistent. A small habit done daily is far more valuable than a large habit done occasionally. It is better to write 200 words a day than 2,000 words once a month. It is better to walk 20 minutes daily than to do an exhausting workout once in a while and then quit. It is better to improve your diet slightly and consistently than to become extreme and then collapse. The habit must be small enough that you can keep it, because keeping it is what builds the machinery. Another reason habits matter is because they protect your time. Without habits, you spend a tremendous amount of energy deciding, should I do it today? Do I feel like it? What if I do it later? That indecision is exhausting. Habits remove the debate. They make action automatic. When something is scheduled, structured, and routine, it costs less mental energy. That frees your mind for creativity, problem-solving, and higher-level thinking. People who accomplish a lot are not necessarily working harder every minute. They are often wasting less energy on internal negotiation. Habits also create confidence, not the loud kind, but the real kind. Confidence is built through evidence. When you keep a promise to yourself, you create evidence that you can trust yourself. When you keep doing the small discipline, day after day, you build a quiet stability inside. You no longer rely on outside approval because you have an internal track record. You can say, I do what I say I will do. That statement, when true, becomes a foundation for success in every area: business, health, relationships, learning, and personal growth. Now, what makes small disciplines become unstoppable momentum is the way they accumulate into skill. Skill is simply the result of repeated practice. The world rewards skill because skill creates value. When you practice a craft consistently, you become more capable. When you become more capable, opportunities open. When opportunities open, you get better results. Better results reinforce your commitment. That is, momentum. Momentum is not a mysterious force. Momentum is what happens when repeated action produces visible progress, and visible progress produces belief. But let's be honest, the beginning of a new habit rarely feels rewarding. In the beginning, you do not have momentum. You have friction. You are fighting old patterns. You are learning. You are slow. You don't see results yet. This is where most people quit. They judge the habit too soon. They look for immediate proof and don't find it. But the early phase is not the proof phase. It is the planting phase. You are planting seeds. And seeds do not look like gardens. If you dig them up every day to check if they are growing, you will kill them. The habit must be protected during its early stage with patience and consistency. That is why a wise person treats habits as non-negotiable appointments with their ideal. You don't wait for the mood. You don't debate with fatigue. You do the small discipline because it is who you are becoming. And even when it is imperfect, you keep it alive. Because a habit does not need to be perfect to be powerful. It needs to be consistent. So keynote number 6 is the practical engine behind everything else. A worthy ideal gives you direction. Progressive realization gives you the definition of success. Clarity gives you focus. The law of direction keeps you moving where you aim. But habits, small disciplines practiced daily, are what turn all of that into reality. They are the bridge between intention and outcome. They are the machinery that keeps your life producing results in the direction you have chosen, day after day, until what once felt difficult becomes natural, and what once felt far away becomes a lived reality through steady, unstoppable momentum. There is a kind of success the world cannot understand because it cannot be photographed, cannot be displayed, cannot be measured on a spreadsheet, and cannot be proven in a single social post. Yet it is the kind of success that, once achieved, makes all other achievements either enjoyable or unnecessary. It is the calm standard for life. Peace of mind that arrives when your actions match your worthy ideal, regardless of your current results. Most people believe peace of mind is something you earn after everything finally works out. After the bills are paid, after the health improves, after the business stabilizes, after the family situation resolves. After the world stops being unpredictable, but that day rarely arrives in perfect form. Life always has unfinished business. Life always has uncertainty. Life always has uncertainty. Life always has another challenge around the corner. If you postpone peace of mind until life becomes perfect, you postpone it forever. Peace of mind is not the reward at the end of the journey. It is the environment you create by living in alignment. Alignment means your daily actions agree with your deepest values and your chosen ideal. When there is agreement between what you believe and what you do, the mind becomes quieter. It stops arguing with itself. It stops living in the tension of contradiction. And that quiet is powerful. It gives you endurance. It gives you steadiness. It gives you resilience. Because a person in alignment is not fighting themselves while fighting the world. The opposite of this is inner conflict, and inner conflict is exhausting. Many people are tired not because they are doing too much, but because they are divided. They want one thing, but do another. They value one thing, but chase another. They speak about ideals, but live by impulses. That division creates a low-grade stress that never fully leaves. It shows up as anxiety, irritability, restlessness, and the nagging feeling that something is off, even when everything looks fine from the outside. And often, the person tries to fix that feeling with more achievement, more pleasure, more distraction, more noise, but the feeling remains because the problem is not a lack of success. By the world's standards, it is a lack of alignment by their own standards. Now here is the liberating truth. Results are not always immediately under your control, but alignment is. You cannot always control the economy, the decisions of others, the timing of opportunities, or the random events of life. But you can control whether you show up for your ideal today. You can control whether you speak truthfully. You can control whether you practice your craft. You can control whether you practice your craft. You can control whether you treat people with decency. You can control whether you take the next step in health, learning, discipline, or service. That is why peace of mind is available now. It is not locked behind future outcomes. It is unlocked by present integrity. This is also why the definition of success as progressive realization is so humane. It says you can be successful while you are still becoming. You can have peace while you are still building. You can feel steady while the outer world is still uncertain. Because if you know you are moving in the right direction, and you know your actions match your ideal, you gain a kind of internal stability that is not dependent on immediate proof. You become able to sleep at night because you are not betraying yourself. You are not living two lives. You are not secretly ashamed of your own choices. You are living in a way you can respect. Let's make this very practical. Suppose your worthy ideal is to become financially stable. The results may take time. There may be debt. There may be a slow climb. But peace of mind begins the day your actions align with the ideal. You begin budgeting, saving, reducing waste, learning, earning, and making wise decisions. Even before the bank account looks the way you want, you feel a new steadiness because you are no longer drifting. You are steering. Or suppose your worthy ideal is health. The scale may not change in a week. Your energy may improve slowly. But peace of mind begins the day your actions align. You walk. You eat better. You sleep more consistently. You stop sabotaging yourself. You begin to respect your body. The peace is not an instant transformation. The peace is not an instant transformation. The peace is in integrity with the direction. Or consider relationships. A person may not be able to fix every relationship immediately. Others may resist. Some wounds take time. But peace begins the moment you decide to act in a way you can respect, to communicate honestly, to apologize when wrong, to forgive when wise, to set boundaries when necessary, to apologize when necessary, to show love through action. The results may vary, but the peace comes from knowing you are living your values rather than your emote. Ions. This also answers a question that troubles many good people. Why do I feel restless even when things are going well? Often it is because they are living out of alignment. They may be winning in one area while losing themselves in another. They may be gaining money but losing health, gaining attention but losing family, gaining comfort but losing purpose. And the mind at its deepest level knows it. The mind does not become quiet simply because you have what you wanted. It becomes quiet when you are who you intended to be. Peace of mind is the result of congruence, your inner standards matching your outer behavior. Now, this does not mean you will never feel stress, sadness, or fear. Those are human emotions. It does not mean you will never face hardship. Hardship is part of life. Peace of mind does not mean a life without storms. It means a life with an anchor. It means you can face storms without being uprooted. It means you can be disappointed without being destroyed. It means you can be challenged without being confused about who you are and what you stand for. There is also a quiet dignity in this standard. When you live in alignment, you stop needing to prove your worth. You stop chasing validation. You stop being controlled by the changing opinions of others, because your success is measured by a deeper yardstick. Did I live according to my worthy ideal today? That question produces self-respect. And self-respect is one of the most valuable forms of wealth a human being can possess. Without it, everything else tastes like ash. With it, even small accomplishments feel meaningful. And perhaps the greatest gift of this keynote is that it restores control to the individual. It says your life is not at the mercy of outer results. Your life can be a success in the truest sense, while the outer world is still catching up. If your ideal is worthy and if your actions match it, then you are living successfully because you are progressively realizing what matters. That alignment creates a calm strength that radiates into everything you do. It changes the way you speak, the way you work, the way you treat people, the way you handle setbacks, the way you plan your future, because you are no longer chasing success as a distant prize. You are living success as a daily practice, and peace of mind becomes the quiet confirmation that you are on the right path.